Now if you remember last time, getting the tank on, so bike's starting to look like a proper bike now, it's looking good. The next job is battery box which I need. Now as I said before, I'm thinking about using this. It's a wildfire extinguisher, and trying to make a battery pack to fit inside of this. So see how it goes, but that's what we're going to be looking at today. Once I get this done, I've got to make a bracket to bolt it onto the frame. But once that's done, I think that's everything on the frame which I've got to fabricate something for. So it's at a stage where it just needs to be stripped down, and then all of the welds run over again, tidied up. I know there's other things. There's the well, while the engine's out, it can be cleaned and that. Carburetor's got to be cleaned. Cables, pipes, rewire, yeah, things like that. But frame itself, that's I think everything to do. So where this is going, it's going in down here, and I want to shorten it by 3 or 4 inches. So I'm going to cut it down a little bit. I've given it a quick try, and I don't know if you can see there, it's cleaned up really well. Even the label on it is cleaning up nicely. I don't know if it's shown very well. So it's going to be nice when it's finished. And I do want to try and keep the label to put on it. It's a nice little feature, you know, just something quirky. So I want to take that off first, and it looks like it's been sort of spot welded in the 4 corners. So I'm going to centre punch it and try and drill through it a little bit, just trying to take away as least material away from that. And then I think what I'll do is cut through it inch or so from this end, so I can have a look inside, see what it's like. I can see this top seam has been soldered on. It's going to take a lot to heat that up to get it off, but I'd like to try and take out everything from inside first. I don't know what's in the inside of here, some kind of pump. It may be that I cut it and heat it up and just take away a little section at a time, but I do want to try and keep that top cup intact. It's got a little cap on here which I think has been used for refilling, so I've took that off, I've made sure it's empty, I've flushed it out. So I think the first thing, try and get the label off, and then we'll cut it and see what's like inside. So where's my centre punch? I'm trying not to drill right through the canister, not that it matters much. Once I get it finished, I can maybe solder it back into place, you know, to fill the hole. That's it. So do the other 4 corners the same. Right, so that's the label off with just 4 little holes in the corners. I'm not quite sure if it's been riveted on. I think I've got some little brass copper rivets that might put them back on with. It's an idea, it might look a little bit better than just seeing a little bit of solder in the corners. I'm going to put that to one side and fit that back on again once I get complete. So next I need to cut through this. So I think I'll just cut along here on the edge of this rib. Then we can see what's actually inside of the thing. Right, that's it. Put some kind of pump in there. And what's inside of here? Other half of the mechanism. pump, and that's just the pipe going down to the bottom there. I was hoping to try and take that out. See if I can grip it in the vise, unscrew it. It's not really doing a lot of damage there, but I'm very short of space, and that extra little half inch could make all the difference. You can see it's been soldered in rather than tapped in. Don't mind getting it. Oh, it's got a nut on there. I wonder if that'll unscrew. I think it's unscrewing out of the handle end. Right, that's it. A valve in the end. So with the handle, which is the part I wanted, it does turn. I'm going to have to free it off a lot though, because it's quite stiff. So that turns freely. So I'll try to get this piece out of here. Yeah, that's it, just leave that to cool. It came out a little bit easier than I thought. So we've got this all taken apart, and I'm now looking at the switch. I've got one of these Lucas type, use them on cranes and tractors and that, one of those switches, which I was going to put inside of here. But as I was saying, room is critical, so I want to try and cut this down as much as I can. So I'm going to cut off about 3/4 of an inch off the end of here, because I don't really want to use the key on it. I'm just going to have this actually turning it. This is held at that end and this end, but with us cutting it down I'm going to lose that, so I want it running on this edge, and that was running loose inside of here, so I've made a little aluminium bush which is going to fit in there, and that has got to be tapped into here, knock it into place, and then I'm going to cut the end off. So I'll cut this end off now. It needs to be cutting off just level with that tiny little hole, which I think has been used for oiling and greasing. So So hopefully, see, a bit swath in there. Hopefully with this bush in there, it should fit in alright. Yeah, and still turn okay. So now I can cut this down a little bit shorter. So it's now trying to decide how far to cut this down, and how to connect it to the rod. Right, I've been having a good think about this, and I've got a plan. So the camper here now did have this rod in, which it's like a pipe, it's got a hole through the middle, it's not going to be strong enough, so I'm going to use this brass bar and turn it down. The only thing is I haven't got taps and dies that thread, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap this M10. So I'm going to make sure it's drilled out correctly, thread that right the way up M10. Now space, the width of the bike is critical with this. I don't want it sticking out too far, so what I'm going to then do is I'm going to put a bolt inside of here, and then I'm going to part it off the top here and down the bottom here. And while I've got that held in here in my lathe, I'm going to turn the end of this down so it's the same diameter as that there. Turn this down to M10 and thread it M10, should I say. I'll have it in 2 halves by then. I'll connect the two together with that, screw it on there and solder it so it's brazed, so it's soldered on, held in place. The end of this is going to have a groove in it for the circlip so that when it fits through here it doesn't drop back out again. And also the end I'll file it down square so that on this here, when I cut that off, the hole inside, it's got a hole in this side, I'll be able to file it square so that we can turn that. So that's the plan anyhow. So first thing, let's see, is going to be drill this out and thread it. So that's the first thing. Now I should have a M10, so it's 8.5mm drill. Yeah, it's drilled out with that already, so that's good. So get me taps out and start threading that. Right, so take this across the lathe, grip down the lathe, and I'll try parting it off as far up as there as I can get, and then down here somewhere. Right, so we've got this in here, I've got the parting tool set up, and I'm going to try parting it off at the end. Right, so now to try to turn it, or part it off further down. I think I'll have to set things up a little bit. Right, so that's it. That's it cut down, and there's the two parts. So let's see, when that is screwed into there, this is where they're going to join, and you can see that there's quite a step there between the two. So I'm going to turn this down a little bit to try to blend it in. So I've just run a bit of emery cloth around the joint, and that's pretty good. And there's a little bit of a notch in there, but so I just got to solder that up when I'm ready. So now the movement of the bar that goes into there, I'll turn it down and thread the end. Right, so I've got the brass bar in there. I'm going to face it off, centre drill it, then use the rotating centre on this side while I turn it down, because it's going to be very thin, quite long, and it will flex. Right, so next thing is to thread it. Need to put a thread on for about 24-25 millimeters. Just like before, put the tailstock up against it so that we get the tap in place nice and square. Right, that should do it. So I'll just put it in the vise and thread it down as far as I need to. Right, so I've threaded the rest of that. Let's see, we've got these two fit on. There's one there. And under there. Right, so the next thing, I'm going to cut it off so that I can mark whereabouts the circlip's got to go. Found a little circlip, so I've just got to put it in the lathe and put a groove where I want it. So I've got to cut it to get it through here to see whereabouts I can. I've got to put the groove. Right, we'll just put a mark on here so I can see whereabouts to put the circlip. So I'm just putting a bit of permanent marker on there. So I'll put that down there and I'll just mark it. Now I'm going to cut the groove a little bit further up, because we can always put a washer underneath, but if we put it too far down then we'll not get the circlip on. So that's the idea. So I've set the lathe up to put the groove in for the circlip. Now what I've done on the end of the shaft, where I'm either going to cut it off when I cut the length or square it off, I've done a test run and it seems to work okay with that one. So I'm going to do the same here. So it's just a matter of this tool which I've got, I've ground it down so it's narrower, just to plunge in there for about 1 millimetre or so. Right, so that should be enough. Right, so I've got that squared off. Next thing, need to get the plastic ready to put that into there. Now it's 6mm square, so what I'm going to do is drill a 6mm hole in there and then use a square file to square it off. Now to get it central, I think the best thing is if I hold it in a chuck and put a drill through it, and then we'll know it's going to be near enough to central. So I'll just go and do that, I'll be back in a second. Right, so I drilled through there. So I need to get the square file and then just try and square it off until we can get that for inside. Right, so it's a nice fit there. So next what I need to do is try to figure out how to hold that inside of there. Right, what I've decided to do is I've made two little brackets out of brass. I'm going to solder the nuts on there and solder them into place there, so they're sticking up one either side. And the switch, I've put a little aluminium bracket on each side, so when that's in there, that'll slot in between them, and then I'm going to drill a hole through and put a nut and bolt through it. I'm not going to put that in yet until I get the bracket in place, in case it's off a little bit, and I'll drill it while they're both matched, well, they're both together in the right place. So I'm going to try adding some solder onto this side first and onto the nut here. Now I've just got some old bolts there just to hold it in place, but first of all, soldering is not something a lot of people do or are confident with, but certain situations like this, it is a good method of joining, and it is quite strong as well. If you get the joint right, it can be really strong. Right, the steps are, make sure everything's nice and clean. No greasy finger marks, you can avoid it. And then we need some of this paste on. Now, thought I had a little paste brush, but I haven't. So I'll put a little bit of this onto here. And this is just standard fluxite paste. Shouldn't really be putting it on your fingers, but clean them off soon. So a little bit on every surface which I'm going to be soldering. Just give my hands a bit of a clean. Now what I'll do is I'm going to tin everything first. Tinning's where you just add a layer of solder on, and then I'll just be able to melt the two together. I'm going to use my little blowtorch, and I need some solder. Just warm it up a bit. Shouldn't take much heating. Normally when the flame turns a greenish colour when you're working with copper or brass, it tends to be hot enough. So that's enough there, so just warm it up and it should flow a bit better than that. Yeah, there we go, nice. You can see it's flowing, it's going to shine. Just let that cool a little bit. Right, so I'll solder this side of the bracket as well. If you notice, I'm trying to hold it in the edge of the vise there, so it's away. The part I'm going to solder is away from the vise, because the vise will act like a heat sink. It'll draw the heat out of the bracket. Right, so it's got plenty solder on. So the nut, put it face down so it's solder to solder. I'll try that nut on. Gonna get warm. Right. What I'm going to do is warm it so the two of them fuse together. Right, now the bolt I've used on here I'm putting in is just a rusty old bolt, and hopefully the solder won't take to it. That's what I'm hoping. So that, just tighten it out a bit. Right, so say the bolt just rusty old bolt, so hopefully the solder won't take to it when I heat this part up to solder to the main casing. So I'm going to do the same type of thing. I'm going to just tin that side, I'm going to tin inside of here, and then try to fuse the two together. Now I'll put the nut in where the nut is in the vise, so hopefully the vise will act as a heat sink as well, and it'll prevent the solder from melting so easily there. There's a nice pool of solder on both sides. So that's two of them coated. I just need to try and hold this in the right place while we melt the solder, and then hold it there till it cools enough to solidify. Right, so that's that one done. I didn't explain what that nut was for there. The nut is for when I put that inside the canister, then I'm going to have a bolt going through to hold the nut either side, so just to hold this plate on the end there. So I've just got to do the same, solder the other one on the other side, and then we're going to start assembling everything. So I haven't done this yet. Let's do that first, I think. So I'm just putting a bit of solder on here so that it's soldering the shaft to the first part and then the handle so that they're all joined together. I've already ran a little bit of solder down the shaft inside, so the first two should be joined okay. It may have ran right down, but I'm just putting a little bit of solder on the join just to make sure the two of them are held together. Right, I'll just leave that to cool and give it a little bit of a clean up. I'll try cleaning this part up as well before we join the two together with a circlip. Right, I've got the top polished, and this is polished up a little bit now, so try and put everything back together. So first of all, I've got a couple of washers put in here. Next, we'll put the soft jars in here, so I don't damage any of the brass. Just try and get the circlip on there, but it's a little bit tight. So the pliers will open up enough to get it on there. It's in there, I think that's in the groove, yeah. And the next thing, try to get the switch in there. Right, so that's it, so that's off, on, that'll be for the starter motor. So now what I've got to do is drill a couple of holes through here to bolt the switch onto the plate. Now you can see there that these don't exactly line up, and that's because when I was soldering this I knew I may not be able to get it exact in the right place, so I left them nice and wide so that we could drill a hole wherever we need to. So I'll drill that out. Right, so I've centre punched that one, and I've held it with the mold grips just to keep the two together while I do it. So just cut that off. If there's any problem with the strength of these, I can always just replace them with the metal bolts. So it's just an extra safety precaution I'm trying to do. Right, so I'll just drill the other one and get the two bolts cut down to length, and that should be it. So I've got the switch finished there. I changed my mind about the nylon bolts. I've put in, well, one thing was they were sticking out a bit, so I've put countersunk bolts in. I've put nylock nuts on the inside. So that's it, and it fits inside of the rest of the fire extinguisher there. So it'll fit in. So we've got off, on, then start, and it automatically flicks back to the run position. I haven't cut this to length yet because I need to know where else is going in there. The starter solenoid's got to go in there, and I'm hoping to get the batteries in there before I cut that down to length. And the batteries, I'm hoping to use some of these, a pack of lithium ion batteries, and create them into a pack, which will do for the 12 volts for the starter motor. Hopefully that's what we're doing next time. So thanks again for joining us everyone, and stay safe, and I hope to see you next time.